Hello, 8th grade. We're going to be working on L.7, which is harder linear equations. There are 3 assignments in here. I'm going to be doing 2 examples that could show up on each assignment. So, moving to the first one. This is from the Orange Book PDF. Now, what the issue we have here is normally after we draw this line down the middle, we already have our x's on one side of the equal sign or other. In this problem, we have 2 separate x's. So that means that we need to move the x's to one side or the other. Now, I'm going to move this 2x over to here. Now, this is a positive 2x, so I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides of the equation. Now, these 2 end up crossing out. So on the left side of the equation, I have negative 4 left. On the right side of the equation, I have 4x plus 8. Now we have a regular equation that we've dealt with before. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. I do not like this new pen color here. So this becomes negative 12 equals 4x. And now I have to divide by 4. So x is equal to negative 3. And now I can check this answer just like I've checked all of them before. I'm going to take that negative 3 and plug it in for each x in this equation. So I get 2 times negative 3 minus 4 is equal to 6 times negative 3 plus 8. So I get negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. And negative 18 plus 8 is also negative 10. So my answer checks out. So that's the first example that we can work on. Second example, if you would like to try this one on your own, you definitely can. We have to do distributive property twice. Distributive property over here becomes 2x minus 6. Distributive property on the right side becomes 8x plus 32. Now, last time I moved the x's to the left. This time I'm going to move them to the right. So I'm going to go minus 8x on both sides of the equal sign. So I get negative 6x minus 6 is equal to 32. So now I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So I get 38 on this side, and I get negative 6x on that side. So now I divide by negative 6. So I get x is equal to negative 38 over 6, which is negative 19 over 3. And you could turn that to a decimal if you want, but then answer would be just fine. So there are 2 examples from the Orange Book PDF. Now, the thing after the Orange Book PDF is a decimal PDF, which means that we're going to be doing the same things that we've been doing, except now decimals will be involved. Nothing else will change. So this is number 3 from one of the assignments. So on this one, I am going to draw my line down the middle. I have to do distributive property over here. So I get negative 24z minus 7.5, but actually this should be a plus 7.5 because it's a negative here and a negative here, so it'd be plus 7.5, which means that I have to subtract 7.5 from both sides of the equal sign. So that's gone. This becomes 20 equals negative 24z. So now I have to divide by negative 24 on both sides of the equal sign. So that goes away. So I get z is equal to, and this could turn into negative 5 over 6. You could also turn that to a decimal. You can check it the same way that you've checked all the other equations. But decimals don't change the process. They just make these a little bit more complicated. If you need a calculator for some of these, probably on the next one I'll need a calculator, and that'll be just fine. How are we doing on time? Not too bad. I'd like to keep it under 10 if possible. So now for this one, we have to do distributive property as well. Now this is the time when a calculator is going to be awfully helpful. So I need 8.5 times 7.5, and that's 63 and 75 hundredths. So this becomes negative 63 and 75 hundredths n plus, now that's going to be negative 42.5. I'm pretty sure here. Yep. So that is equal to 29.5. One sec here. So now I have to add this 42.5 to both sides of the equal sign. Well, that got messy. So I end up getting negative 63.75 n is equal to 13. So now I'm going to divide by negative 63.75. So my n is equal to so negative 0.2, basically 2/10 would be fine. Now I really want to check my answer here, so I'm going to. So I'm going to go negative 8.5 parentheses 7.5 times negative 0.2 plus 5, and that has to be equal to negative 29.5. So 7.5 times negative.
You need to turn the lights off on your car. John Weidelberg, your lights are on.
That's hilarious. Okay, so 7.5 times, got me all flustered here, negative 0.2 is equal to 1.5 plus 5 is equal to 3.5. So it's negative 8.5 times negative 3.5. And it looks like we made a mistake. Times 8.5. Because they're both negative, make a positive. 29.75, and actually that's close enough to our actual answer to call that good. It means we had a rounding error somewhere, but that actually looks pretty good, so we can call that correct. With decimals, anytime you are estimating or solving, you're going to be lost. So now the last section is working with fractions, which means common denominators, which you guys love. So for this one, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, just like I've always done. So now I get 1/2 plus 2. Well, that's going to be 2 and 1/2, but I'm going to write that as 5/2. Impropers are usually going to be easier here, so that's equal to 2/3 x. Now I have 2 options for this last step, okay, and I'm going to do both. You could divide by 2/3 on both sides, because you always divide by the thing in front of x. Well, if you divide by 2/3, that means that you're going to go 5/2 times 3/2, because when you divide by a fraction, you have to flip and then multiply by the reciprocal. That's one way you could do it. The other way you can do it is you can think of this as multiplying by 2 and dividing by 3. So you need to do the opposite of that, which ends up being multiplying by 3 and dividing by 2. Because these two fractions multiplied together become 6/6, which is equal to 1. So then you can multiply by the opposite on both sides. So you end up getting the same answer both ways. X is equal to 15/4. And I know you guys dislike fractions like every other middle school student in the history of ever has hated fractions, but they're not going to go away. They're just a necessary part of mathematics. So that is our answer. You can check it like any other answer. And we'll do one last one, which is a distributive property with some fractions, which means we have 1/2 times 2 ends up being 1x. 1/2 of 3 ends up being 3/2. And this is going to be equal to 3/5, which means I have to draw my line down the middle, and I'm going to add 3/2 to both sides. Now, in order to add that to both sides, I need a common denominator, which will be tenths. So I'm going to turn this into 6/10 plus 15/10, which is equal to 21/10. So I'm going to get 1x is equal to 21/10. And since 1x is the same as regular x, because of the identity property, we are all done. Okay? Now, if you give me this keyword here, you can earn yourself a piece of candy for watching through the entire video. If you have questions, as always, please let me know.